I'm going to talk about the urban employment and livelihoods, and in four small brief parts. One is the employment challenge in India overall. The second is on urban employment. The third is that exclusionary cities provide a threat to urban livelihoods and a little sense of how that happens, and inclusive cities as an alternative paradigm for employment and livelihoods. My overarching concern, and we all share it, but I think it's worth remembering, is that India is a fast-growing economy, but employment is not growing as fast as output. Deep pockets of poverty persist, and inequality is growing. And my underlying assumptions with the overarching concern is that the vast majority of the Indian workforce is informally employed, even in urban areas. That informal employment tends, on average, to be associated with lower earnings and higher risks than formal employment, and therefore increasing the earnings and reducing the risks in the informal economy are key to reducing both poverty and inequality. And yet, these fast-changing cities with their exclusionary urban policies and practices tend to do just the opposite. They tend to decrease the earnings and increase the risks in the informal economy. The employment growth rate over the period I'm talking to for the most part is 2000 to 2005. It's been growing employment at 2.85% per annum. This is lower by far than the GDP growth rate, but it's actually lower than the growth rate of unemployment, which has been growing at 3% per annum. And it's mostly been employment growth in the informal economy, including the informalization of once formal wage employment in the public and private sectors. The real concern is underemployment, because many people are employed, but they're employed in the informal economy. And it's 93% of the total workforce, and we now know 80% of the total urban workforce. On the quality, another thing that's happened in India, there's been a shift in the type of employment. Wage employment is actually on the decline. Regular wage employment was on the decline. Casual wage employment is also now on the decline. And self-employment was where we see the significant increase. So over half of the total workforce in India, 52.5%, is self-employed. This is the urban working age population. And the main thing that comes through in this slide is the difference between women and men. A full 76% of the women are what is called economically inactive. The other is that if you look among the economically active, the unemployed, there's a far higher percentage of the women who are unemployed among the economically active. In all three slides, what I've tried to do to show trends, because the tables that were generated had the 1999-2000 figures, is I've put a star. So if it's 1 star, it's up 1 percentage point or more. If it's 2 stars, or less rather, and if it's 2 stars, it's up 2 percentage points. This one has employment type, whether it's formal or informal. Employment status is whether they're wage workers or self-employed. And in the WeGo network and with SEWA, we differentiate between the self-employed, between the employers, the own account workers, and the contributing family members. So what this shows is that 80% of the total workforce is informal, and this is up from the earlier period. And where it's really up is in formal enterprises. The column headings are the unit in which they're employed. And what it shows is that the self-employed in urban areas compared to the total India is slightly less. It's 45%, but it's up by 2 percentage points or more. And 55% in urban areas are wage workers, but that share is actually down. But even if the wage worker share is down, among wage workers, what you find is that where you have an increase in informal wage workers, and a full 2/3 of wage workers are informal, where you have the increase, it's wage workers for formal enterprises and the domestic workers in households.